Not sure how much time they're gonna give me. I was aiming for the full hour. It's 4:47 right now, so we're like 17 minutes behind. We'll see how it goes. So in this workshop, we'll use NgRx to improve some of our user experiences that we have. If you want to follow along and try to implement some of the things yourself, you can clone the repo there and check out optimistic tag because it's going to take a while. And then you can do yarn install and ngserve as you usually do. If you looks like not a lot of people have laptops, so we're going to do things a little bit differently then, so we can actually fit in the time as well. Alternatively, you can go to the StackBlitz. Who's using StackBlitz? Okay, I'm actually quite surprised. Not a lot. So, who've heard of StackBlitz before? Okay, more people heard about it. So this is online IDE that's VS Code based, and it's getting more and more powerful. And right now it allows you to, for example, if you might notice that GitHub repo. So you remove the .com from the GitHub, and you just put the stackblitz.com, and it will pull the repo from the GitHub, do all the installation, and it'll work just fine. Tree is the tag there, so this is the starting point. Okay. And all the laptops. Okay. So the workshop here that I do today in this 1 hour, it's a tiny portion of my 2-day NgRx workshop that I typically do, and sometimes can squeeze it in 1 day. If you were in the NG talks last year in Kharkiv, I was doing 1 day NgRx workshop based on this as well. And this year, at NG Talks, I'm doing actually the full 2 days in November. So if you want to join that one for the full experience, welcome. Or I'm also doing a 1-day workshop, based on the same material in Poland, in NG Poland as well. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is optimistic UIs and other means to sort of speed up your application, or at least speed up the perceived performance of it. And we'll start with the wait times. Like, as you probably know, there's a research that based on this as well. Like, as the wait times of users go up, well, the satisfaction goes down, right? It's almost like common sense, but there's a research to prove it. However, there's another interesting statistics, is that not all wait time is the same. Like, some of the wait time is a passive wait time. And the passive wait time, when user cannot do much, right? Just, for example, sit and stare at the screen for looking for that spinner. And people tend to overestimate that wait time by 36%. So, your tools are telling it's 3 seconds, right? But it's actually a second extra. And what are we waiting for usually on the website, right? It's those AJAX requests, right? To work with the async data, get, update, delete. And, but the AJAX was actually a nice gift to us as developers, right? We didn't have to, reload the entire page. We can get the requests and get the data that we need asynchronously. But it also gave us, our users, their beautiful spinners, right? And I don't know how about you, but I'm not a big fan of them. In fact, I'm probably trying to do anything possible to get rid of them. And today's talk was actually, in the morning, was also part of that, right? Getting rid of spinners, speeding things up. So yeah, I doubt anybody enjoys watching that. So, on top of that, Chrome team at Google has a Rail performance model, for example, to measure the performance of the apps. Who heard of Rail before? Good, one. Okay, and it's a performance, it's a user-based performance model that breaks up into the 4 key aspects of it. So it's a response, animation, idle, and loading of your application. Today we're focusing on the loading part as well. So what that model says that on the 3G network, on the mid-range mobile device, the recommended loading time should be the first one, should be under 5 seconds. And any subsequent loads should be actually under 2 seconds. So this is, let's say it's a good web application. And we're going to work today with this web application that I have. It's called NgRx Workshop Store. And it has 3 pages. First one is a products page where you see a bunch of cards of different products. I will call it a list of products. And when you click on them, you get into the product details page where user can rate the product, add to the cart, and it has more information here than the list. It has also that description on top of it. And when you click back, you get back to the, obviously, product list page. It has one more page, but it won't be of our concern, like the cart page for today's workshop. So this is pretty much the 2 pages that we'll be working with today. So, first one. When we load the page, we send a request. Request comes back with a list of products. But we usually try to optimize those request responses, right? And our list of products does not give us the full details of each product. It only gives us minimal information that we would need about the product. For example, we definitely don't fetch description as well here. And when we click on that product, it takes us to the product details page where we send an additional request for the product information, for the specific product now. Not the entire list, but the specific product. And that has all the same fields like title, price, maybe rating is separate, but it also has a description and an image URL. So our app reacts to that. And because we already had some previous information about the product, we can actually display it in here. For example, you see speakers has right away the title, image is there right away, price is there right away, and we're waiting for the next response for the product with the description to put it here. So in this case, we're using NgRx as almost like a cache, as I described today. And we've seen this one today as well in the morning. So this is how it compares, right? Where you don't use a cache and wait for that product details response to get all the information, or the one that uses the cache and already shows some information and wait for the rest of it. Okay, and the next one was getting back to that list of products. So here, when the user clicks on that NgRx Work Store title, it gets back to the main page as well. But because we already were on that page before, and we had a cached version of list products, it was a product decision on this app in particular that it's okay to show the stale data for a short brief period while the new list of products arrives. And while we're showing the stale data, we can see there is an indeterminate progress bar on top indicating to the user that, hey, this could be still stale, and the new data might arrive and things might change as well. But for now, we're happy with that. Well, in our application, the list of products doesn't change, so that works even better. All right, and then again, we can compare the two. So the one we just refreshes and waits for a response versus the one that shows the previously cached data until the new data arrives. Okay? One thing, again, the data could be stale. So this is one of the notes to consider. So to get all those benefits from the product details page in our component, we don't have to actually do too much. So it's listening for the current product, whatever it is, says whatever the information you have, either partial info or the entire info, says I don't care, just give it to me and I'll display it in my product. And at the same time, it says, fetch the current product, so just give me the new data if you have. All right, so again, here's our component. This is where we select. And when the component initializes, right, just give me that data. Okay, so the trick here is in the effect, right? So effect would have our type that we listen to for this fetch current product. Then we would get the current product ID that we have in the store. How do we get it? Usually we connect the routing state, URL state, into the store as well. And this is how we get that ID out of it. And then we, with our product service, we call it, give me that specific additional information about that product. And when it succeeds, we just push that product in for, and of course we have to handle errors. So an error, we don't do much here, but we should be. And so the entire magic of this interaction where we have partial data or complete data is in the reducer itself. By the way, here I'm using the newer syntax of reducer. I don't know if you're familiar with this. New NgRx was released a week ago, 2 weeks ago now. And this is the version 8 syntax. So we changed from switch-based reducers more onto create reducer factory that takes this initial state and takes many on functions. And in that on function, we pass our action as the first parameter, and the second parameter is a callback what to do with this, like a state and the action that we get itself. For example, here, products, right? This is fetch product, success to multiple, the list, when we initially load the page. And here we're using the NgRx entity to work with, adapter to work with collections. So here we do add all, right? That means remove any previous products that we have and pass the new ones that we've got here. Okay, so this is when we get the multiple. This is the initial list. But then when we have a product, a single, one product, right, with the details, we just do the upsert one with that product. But notice we still work with the same collection. It's still a collection of products. So we just update it with more information like description. So this is how we do it with this. Okay. So now to the optimistic UI. Who's using this technique? Anybody using this technique, optimistic UI technique? Okay. Thank you. So you've all seen this, and you definitely interacted with the applications that use them. For example, in Twitter or Facebook, when you click the like, the UI reacts right away, right? Although at the same time, the request to update that is still being processed, sent, and received back. But UI already reacted right away. But in case of a server error, we usually would roll back to the previous result. Yeah, you can think of it as like looking at the world with rose-colored glasses. So with this optimistic UI here example, see when we click add to the cart, say this is a 2-second response. Our UI in the optimistic approach reacts right away. So you click right away, you see 2, you click again, you see 3, so it's more items in the cart. Well, this one waits for the confirmation to come back without the optimistic, and then increases. So it's definitely, makes the UI a lot more interactive. There's a lot of cautions with this. First of all, we shouldn't do the optimistic UIs on interfaces that are have very critical to succeed. So the API should have a low failure and rejection rate. And it should be critical as well. For example, adding item to the cart is fine, but completing the purchasing flow is definitely not fine. And the other kind of requirement is that the response should be within 2 seconds. And 2 seconds is important here because 2 seconds is exactly the maximum amount of user attention span for that particular item. So if you revert back to the previous state, like after 5 seconds in, it'll be very confusing for the user. All right. So how do we do this? How do we do this technique with NgRx? Let's first see, I'm using the map to action, although we sort of removed it here. But anyhow, in a typical scenario, we call the server add to cart, and on a success, we push the item ID into the reducer, right? And it would add it to the list. And this is the typical not optimistic approach. And on the error, we do nothing here. However, with the optimistic, we switch things around. We add the item to that list on the add item call, like on the add item action. On success, we actually do nothing because we already added it to the list and our application already is aware that we have that extra item. And on the error, we pass that item ID again, and then the reducer will revert it. So here success does nothing, and the error will pass it. So in the reducer here, on the add item, we would add it to the list, and on the error, we would remove it from the list, and success does nothing. So this is how, in a very easy way, we convert from pessimistic to the optimistic UI with NgRx. If you're using this service-based approach, it gets a little bit more involved. There's a lot more actually to do. But you can see Kim Maiden's talk from NGConf of this year. She touched on that topic, how to do it with a service-based approach. Okay. All right. So now it was supposed to be you trying to implement this, but I'm going to just show it. Okay. See my screen? Okay. Okay. Just give me a second. Try to save it. Is it better? Yeah. Let's see. Okay. No, it's not better. Anyhow. I'll show you the changes here as well. So I'll check out. Okay, now it's better. Local. All So this is the next milestone. Here, okay. So to change what we had to do, I'll go with all three files that we did the change to. Okay, so previously our success action was taking the property. In the new version, we don't need success at all. We just deleted it, left it there, but we don't really need it. It does nothing. We now, instead, in the error now, we added the property here as well. So now error does something. So this is the actions. All right, in effect, this is what I was talking about. Now, on the success, we pass nothing, while on the error, we pass that item ID. And the most heavy work was in the reducer here. So previously, we were doing it on success. We were adding new item, right? This item that we were adding to the array. But this time we do it on the add item. This is the one that invokes this effect to run. So it's before we even do the service call. And on the error, before we were doing nothing, but now on the error, we'll find that item ID, remove that element, and push the new list. So that means we're reverting it back. Okay, how does it look? So this is a before. It doesn't have any images, but basically you click one, waits, and then sometimes the error happens, right? But we know that. And then 2, and then 3. You probably get the point. All right, now we'll see how the optimistic does it. So we really want to add math book. So again, we do 2, 3, 4, and if the error happens, I have to put every fourth time, boom, couldn't add it, it just reverts back. So that item is no longer in our cart. Okay, so that was optimistic. So optimistic and the other one, the cache, they work really well when we navigate within the page itself. Right? We will go from one page to another. But can we help and get rid of the spinner on the initial load as well? Right? Can we provide some data immediately? Well, we can. We can use local storage for it. It's a browser's API to store some data locally within the browser. So, and now what we can do, I'll show you what we can do with that. All right, so here's the difference. One shows the stale data while indicating that it might change, again, with the progress bar. And the other one just waits loading for the entire data. So that one feels more responsive. Again, here is a few cautions again. So first of all, don't put any sensitive data in the local storage, like no tokens, nothing. And secondly, the data there could be very, very stale, right? If within the page, user could be coming back within, 5 minutes or so, you can assume. But here, user cannot be coming back to your application, a month or so. So, although you can add timestamps and watch for timestamps when you rehydrate it, but generally, the data could be very stale. So how we put that data into the local storage? Well, NgRx has something called a meta reducer. And this reducer can do things to the data just before it hits the reducer or just after. And what we do is on the initial load, we will sync from local storage, check if anything's there. If something's there, we then hydrate our UI with this. And all the other actions, we can sync back to the local storage. So it's very simple. Oops, too early. All right. But we'll be right on time. All right. So we'll check out master. I'm going to show you how we do it. And we'll switch to local storage. So in the app module, okay, I'll probably start with this one. So this is a very, very basic implementation of it. Don't use it in production. But basically what we do here is we'll listen for all of the state and actions that fly by here. And we have a reducer here as well that reduces it. So this is how we can do it before or after the reducer, or even instead of a reducer if we really want to. So here we'll reduce the state first. So it means that we apply that action to that state. And then we check if the type of the action is the init. Init is a special action coming from the NgRx store. It's when the NgRx bootstraps, it will issue this action by itself. And then we can check the local storage if there is any like product data here, for example. And if there is the data, then we will actually replace that reduced state. We'll get the product, our other properties from the product, but basically the rest will replace the products with the data that we had in the local storage. On all the other actions, except again update, we would sync that to the product data. Okay, so we'll stringify all the products that we have and push it to the local storage. So it's very, very primitive. We push on all the other actions and we pull on the init. Okay. And then we have to add this function to the list of the meta reducers. And that's basically it. You can see here, let me see. We'll serve it. Okay. And here, if we refresh the page, we see it immediately, while at the same time, there's this progress bar. See, I'm not using spinners. I don't like spinners. I'd rather use the progress bar. And if we open our application, we see that our product data is stored here. So when the next time we come back, this is the data that gets in first. Okay. And that is basically it. Thank you. Any questions about this? Since we'll have another 10 minutes or so.
So in case using
That's interesting. Yes, so meta reducers, you can attach them to the root, but you can also attach them for the 4 features, right? And then the 4 features, you should be aware of your structure and sync only the stuff that you actually need. But before you use local storage, it should be something that's not, I don't think it's good to sync the entire state, right? For example, you definitely don't want to be syncing like loading states, error, and stuff like that, right? When somebody opens the page, if the last thing they did was error, you don't want to see the error there. So you have to be pick and choose, and you have to know the structure of your store. But you can add into the 4 feature as well. It's not only for root. Yeah.
Why are you not using FX instead of MetaReducer? Like, what are the pros and cons?
Why am I using effects instead of MetaReducer? That's a good question. So MetaReducers make that synchronization completely abstract for the entire application, right? So in the fact, you'd have to be more involved. Again, if you want to sync just a particular part, maybe it's all right. But then you have to be sure that that effect is the only piece that works with that piece of data. For example, in our case, we have a product that list affects the data, and a single product fetch as well affects the data. So then you would have to have a special effect, right, to write. So yeah, this way it guarantees that it, you have to wrap your reducer with something, but this is exactly what it does. It's not a reducer. Yep.
What about the project NgRx local storage? Because as version 8, you included this freeze project into this.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to include NgRx local storage?
So the local storage project, the last time I looked into it was December last year. From what I see, that project is not quite maintained to the level that I would have to be comfortable using.
That's another idea to contribute to.
It's another idea to contribute, definitely. But I would use it with caution, and I think the list of issues there grew and were the author was not responsive. So I think I mentioned it in the article that I wrote about the 5 tips to improve user experiences, but I definitely not vouch for that package.
Great, but I think that they came back with updates.
So the question was, there's a library, which I think I know which one you're talking about that helps synchronization of data with local storage for the NgRx. And yeah, you see, like even small meta reducers that you can write yourself are sometimes sufficient as well, yeah. Yep.
Just architecture question. So imagine that you have 3 pages. The first one is list of products, the second one is list detail, and the third one is cart. So in store you have 3 attributes, list, product, and cart. For example, for cart, would you store list of ideas or hold the entity? If you store hold the entity, you will copy it or you will create a link.
So the question is, how would you store the entities in a cart, for example, when you add the product? Would you store just an idea of that product, or would you store the entire product? I think it's up to you. If the product is your client-side model that you operate with, it's completely fine to store the entire product. And for the products, I don't have a product as a separate item. I only have a list of products. So when the product arrives, it updates one of the products in that list, right? And that's why I need only one selector there to get current product, right? So I don't keep a product separately. And this is the general advice for any data that you put into the store. If you don't put something called derived state in the store, derived state means that you can, from state that's already in the store, you can through different transformations, get that information. That's the job of the selectors. Selectors should be picking up based on the information they have in the store. And the persistence data you get from a server, I try to keep it untouched almost when I store it in the store. And if I need only some of the things in the view from it, again, I would use selectors for that. This is their job. Like basically selectors are your API into the store. Yep.
You showed the case with using an existing entity, but it will be a little trickier when you create an entity and use an optimistic response for it, because you don't have an ID, for example. You have a nice tab for handling this. So it's the creation of entity.
So when you create the entity, you don't have ID. How would you correlate that, right, I guess, when you get the response back from it? Yeah, that's a tricky one. Sometimes I try, it's a really tricky one. So sometimes you can have like some kind of correlation ID that you attach like a metadata to that. And then when you get back, you sort of, in the effect itself, you would know that this is what you work with. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
As most of APIs I was working on update or on create, they've been responding with the object.
Yeah.
Like with added properties like created add, plus modified add, and the ID created. So I think that in this example, you could just do the same action for the add product success. So you have something in the store without ID, for example, entity without ID. So you can show to user something, but in the background, when you get response from the backend with the rest of properties, those created by backend, then you are just updating in the background, and it's working really well.
Yeah, you can do it that way, but you have to be sure that this is exactly the one that you return.
The reducer is the same function on both actions. The on add item and add item success.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, thank you. I think our time is almost up. We'll have a panel discussion, and I'm up for that as well. If you have any questions or comments or feedback or anything that you want to discuss, talk about, please, I'm here until for sign time and available. Find me. All right, thank you.